The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by two guests. I'm going to be joined by Brian Kiger, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Conveyco Technologies, and also Megan Fitzsimmons, who is Chief Compliance and ESG Officer at GXO. And they are both a part of the Mobile Automation Group as part of MHI. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Mobile Automation Group, but we're going to talk about a topic that I think is very interesting and maybe people don't think of right away when they think about mobile automation, which is sustainability in the warehouse. We're going to talk a little bit about the intersection of sustainability, global citizenship, and innovation overall as it pertains to the warehouse, and what role the warehouse also plays in the greater idea of sustainability within an organization and within, humanity as well. So Brian and Megan are going to join me today. So welcome to both of you. How are you?
Doing well, Kevin. Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
Good. Happy to get you both here. Interested to talk about this topic. I think it's a very important one. But before we kind of dive fully into the sustainability discussion here, let's get just a little brief overview from Brian here on what is the Mobile Automation Group, and I guess tell us too, how is the Mobile Automation Group involved in sustainability?
So the Mobile Automation Group is an industry group within MHI. As you mentioned, we are made up of we're growing constantly, close to 40 members now. Some of these are OEMs or manufacturers of AMRs, AGVs, IMRs, whatever alphabet you come up with these days. It's constantly changing. And then some of them are component suppliers, right? Your sensors, your laser bumpers, these types of things, your batteries, technology, anything that can be part of that AMR, AGV mobile platform, if you will. So within this group, our goal is really one of many goals, but the biggest goal is really want to promote, market awareness and growth and the effective use of mobile platform technology. And as you see more and more, especially coming out of COVID, you see a lot of people investing more and more into automation. And the big part of that has been the mobile automation piece. And as this grows, it's also important for us to make sure we're staying at the forefront of safety. Safety always has to come first. This is something I drive very, very hardly into my group to make sure that they are aware of it. Every company needs to be compliant. And one of the challenges is that as you get more and more new technology out there, unfortunately, they keep making new standards, right? So how do you keep up with all the standards? How do you know which ones apply? So this is something that we as a group meet constantly with and make sure we're helping all of our member companies stay up to date. And ultimately, we want to be the trusted independent authority, on mobile platforms. We want to be the go-to. A lot of customers like Megan at GXO, they want to be able to know that they are choosing a solution and a partner that understands safety, understands the trends, and understands where the technology should be going and how to implement it properly. And these are the things that we drive into our industry group. Now, as far as sustainability, this is a big topic for us as we're moving forward. There's always a growing trend of innovation in the warehouses when it comes to automation. And we're trying to push sustainability a lot more because it is important. It's no longer just about efficiencies, right? Companies are recognizing the importance, I think, more and more of minimizing those environmental impacts and trying to create this more responsible supply chain. And AMRs are a big part of that. These robots, they can automate tasks like picking and moving goods, reducing the reliance on fuel-powered forklifts, minimizing emissions, they can make the processes more simplified, and we're trying to enable the workers, right? People are still our greatest asset, regardless of the fact of, all this labor challenges and shortages that we talk about. They're still our greatest asset. So we need to enable them to do a better job. And if they have better jobs, we'll get more into this later. If they're able to do their job better, cuts down on errors, which cuts down on returns. It's the whole circular thing that Megan and I can talk about quite a bit today. So we are really trying hard inside of MAG to, push sustainability and be at the forefront. So customers like Megan can rest assured that she's getting, the best solutions, and they're looking out not only for her efficiencies in the warehouse, but they're also taking into accountability the sustainability factor as well.
Yeah, very interesting there, and I think that's such a great thing to, as a group, to make sure that collectively you're all trying to push that at the end of the day, like make it better for that end user, the customer, like you said, like Megan herself, right, at GXO. So I guess let's dive into the conversation around sustainability here, and I think it's it's kind of a broad term in a sense, right? But I think as we look at it from the warehousing perspective, Megan is best positioned to kind of maybe define sustainability within the warehouse for us. What does that really, I guess, mean to you, Megan? I mean, you're ESG officer, so you're kind of dealing with this nonstop, right? So this is kind of your focus. So define this for us.
Yeah. So the way I describe really sustainability and ESG as a whole is I describe it as our how. So we're focused on what we do, but we're equally focused on how we do it. And ESG is how. Are we doing it sustainably, safely, inclusively, ethically, responsibly, all the adverbs. It's really that how. It's something that is critically important to our employees. It's important to our investors, and it's really important to our customers. We have a broad base of blue chip customers who really care about this as well, because their customers care about this as well, and their investors and their employees care about this. And so it's a huge bucket. Really, what falls into this? It is safety, it is environmental, and I think when we talk about what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's not sustainability for sustainability's sake. And we have a board member who likes to say, "Doing well while doing good." And I really do believe that that's true. These are important things to do for the planet, but at the end of the day, we're a business, and we're also doing this because it's important to our business. We find sustainability and ESG more broadly to be a true competitive advantage for us in terms of winning and retaining customers, winning and retaining employees, and operating more efficiently. And I think we can talk a little bit more about the economic benefit to it, which might not be on day one, but if you look long term or you look broadly enough with the right lens, you will see there is a business benefit to almost every single one of these sustainability initiatives, whether it's decreased energy costs over time, decreased operating costs over time. Brian was mentioning even in his introduction about mobile automation, increases in productivity and efficiency. Anything that increases efficiency and accuracy and productivity is going to have a sustainability benefit as well. So it's really, how do we conceptualize sustainability? And it's not just, do we love trees? It's really, what is the broader impact of this? And it's not just going to be an environmental one, it's going to be an economic one as well.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, Megan, I think you hit spot on. And it's more than just going out and hugging a tree every now and then, right? So too many people focus on the environmental aspect of it, but you're right. Sustainability in the warehouse, it's a holistic concept. It encompasses the environmental, economic, and even social as well. So it's constantly requiring a commitment to that continuous improvement, to innovation and collaboration across all the stakeholders. And technology does play a vital role in achieving warehouse sustainability, as Megan was hitting on. So anytime we can optimize that inventory management, reduce the waste, improve the picking and packing efficiencies, we're moving towards sustainability.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes. Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to put it on, from both your perspectives is, it's not just about, like you said, loving a tree or hugging on a tree or something like that. It's also about, I love that what you said there, Megan, about doing good while doing well, right? At the same perspective, because, as a business, like, yeah, we got to make some money to stay in business, right? And keep doing these things. But, there's also benefits there where I think for a long time, there was a lot of kind of messaging narrative or, just misinterpretation. I think that, being sustainable is just gonna increase cost, right? And that's the only thing. But I think from what you're both saying there is that, there's opportunity to see all these other benefits from an efficiency, productivity, cost saving perspective, and at the same time be sustainable in a sense. So if we look at an organization overall in the big picture, and then, your warehouse distribution is part of that organization in a sense. What impact does the warehouse have? And maybe not even impact, maybe we could even say like opportunity, right? What impact or opportunity does the warehouse have to really make an impact on the overall sustainability goals of an organization?
So the warehouse, of course, it's going to play a significant role when you're looking at the overall sustainability impact of any organization. It's not always the first thing that comes to mind when you're talking about sustainability. You don't immediately go to the warehouse, but its influence can be substantial across multiple areas. I mean, you look at your resource consumption, for instance, in a warehouse. Warehouses consume huge amounts of energy for lighting, heating, cooling, powering equipment. This is something that Megan and I were just talking about yesterday, especially with some of her operations that she can kind of maybe hit on. They really look at the temperature, and that drives a lot of decisions they make and what they're doing around their operations and the how part too. You look at waste generation. I was telling her the story of, I won't name the company, but there was a certain company that on a daily average, they would end up with 2 to 3 bays of waste just from the packaging material. And it can be substantial. And of course, every warehouse is a hub for transportation, right? You got trucks coming and going, receiving goods, delivering them. And there's a lot of things you have to worry about when it comes to transportation emissions, because this contributes heavily to the greenhouse gas emissions. And then I think you have to look at the employee footprint as well. The size and operations of a warehouse directly impacts its workforce. And you have to ensure, going back to what I said earlier, you have to ensure that safe and healthy working environment, promote fair labor practices, offer opportunities to professional development, contribute to the organization's, all this contribute to the overall organization's social responsibility. So this goes back to that social aspect. So I think the impact can be both negative and positive. It's not just the storage space out there. It's a vital link that we have in our sustainability chain of an organization. And it can be both positive and negative, but by implementing sustainable practices within the warehouse, organizations can, and Megan knows I love to talk about this, create that ripple effect. The ripple effect is something that you really need to pay attention to, because organizations can create a ripple effect that benefits their entire operations and contributes to a more sustainable future just by implementing more sustainable practices in the warehouse itself.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really, I'm a big fan of the warehouse. You couldn't tell, podcast about a warehouse, but I think there is such an impact that the warehouse can make on the organization as a whole there, and I'm curious, Megan, your perspective on that. But also, I think Megan, you have a little maybe different position too, because you're on both sides of the table. I mean, GXO primarily organization is warehouses, right? But you also are kind of an extension of other companies, being a 3PL fulfillment partner in that aspect. So I'm curious from your perspective what you think about that, and kind of the impact you can have not only within GXO, but then also the impact for some of your clients and customers too.
Absolutely. And I think there's really two ways to think about it. And Brian touched on this a little bit, which is the actual warehouse itself. So what's the environmental impact of the warehouse itself? And then the other one is, what's the impact of what you're doing inside that warehouse? And And that's the piece where really, we publish an annual ESG report talking about our data and our footprints and our progress toward our own reduction goals. But then we share a lot of case studies talking about what we're doing for our customers, because a lot of the impact that we have isn't captured in our data, captured in our customers' data. So it's what can we do inside that warehouse to help the customer with their own sustainability goals, to enable the circular economy, to be more efficient and more sustainable in terms of what we do. I'll give you one example. We process, you'll see those commercials on TV, send in your old phone, you get a new phone, get a discount on your new phone. For a major provider, all those old phones come to us and we process them within the warehouse. It's this incredible setup with a mix of a lot of different automation, highly automated, a lot of really impressive technology that is threaded together and integrated. And what that has resulted in is a few things. One, it's decreased the cost for our customer by more than a third for processing phones and managing it. So that's the economic payback right there. It also keeps almost all of those phones out of landfill. For the most part, the only phones that get e-wasted from that facility are government devices, because the government wants to make sure that they're truly wiped and they're not going anywhere else. But otherwise, those phones go back out to have another life. Sometimes they can be sold as new. They're graded, they're cleaned, they're wiped. Sometimes they go to an aftermarket seller. Sometimes they go to someone who breaks them up and uses them for spare parts. But they all go on to have another life, and it's this automated process. We have other sites where we are repairing products and sending them back out. We have sites where we do refurbishment and refreshment for retail, for clothing. So let's say you order a t-shirt, you try it on, you don't want to keep the t-shirt, you send it back, but it's a black t-shirt. When you tried it on, you got deodorant on it. There are some warehouses where that t-shirt goes in the trash because you can't resell that to someone.
Yeah.
But for a lot of our customers, what we'll do is we'll clean that t-shirt back up, we'll send it back out. You can sell that t-shirt for full price and it stays out of the warehouse. So it's everything as simple as let's say you have a cat. There's cat hair all over the garment. Someone take the time where the customer's paying for lint rolling that thing and it goes straight out. We have some sites where we have ozone machines that can take, cigarette smoke smell out of clothing, or even where they're matching the precise shade of shoe polish and fixing up a scuff on a leather boot, where again, that can go back out full price. So it's a benefit to the customer because instead of losing the value of that product, they can sell it. And then also that those products are staying out of landfill, and you reduce the amount that the manufacturer has to over manufacture in order to have enough products. And so it's what are you doing in the site itself? How green is it? How renewable is it? There's a whole lot of levers you can pull, but then it's also what are we doing for our customers within the facility that is also enabling sustainability progress.
Yeah, you scared me there for a minute, Megan. I thought you were going to talk about recycling cats. So, okay.
Oh, well, yeah.
We
I
do
mean,
not
they
do
have
that.
9 lives, right? So, I mean, that's the
Oh,
thing,
that's
right?
true.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's very interesting there. And I think, a lot of, even a testament to what we were saying earlier, right? That they're, not only are we doing sustainable practices that have an overall benefit for environment, human beings, and just the world in general, but also, saving a third of cost, right, on the cell phone example, I mean, I think is huge for a business, right? So, a lot of different things that can be done there. And, if we look at some of these opportunities potentially and, how warehouses can play a part or just be sustainable on their own as well, I mean, what are some of like the big drivers that can make a lot of change, or even just like low-hanging fruit that can kind of easily be addressed and kind of gone after to start making an impact like pretty quickly?
So there I think very low hanging fruit are things like LEDs, and at GXO actually we have an LED goal that we've just about met, that 80% of our operations are. That is another initiative too. There's a cost to switching to LEDs, but there's a pretty short payback. And a few years ago in Europe, when energy costs were higher, the payback was a matter of months. But in any event, within a couple of years, those have paid for themselves in terms of the energy efficiency of those bulbs. So those are low-hanging fruit. Even things too where you can have sensors where lights are turning on and off at a certain time. You can manage carefully how and when you're climate controlling a building. So we'll have floors maybe that are radiant heating floors that detect certain temperatures, and they turn on at a certain temperature and then turn off at a certain temperature. Certainly when you start to move more broadly, you think about things like renewables. So procuring renewable energy. What can you do with respect to solar? You go somewhere like Inland Empire and you see miles upon miles upon miles of flat roofs and often uncovered parking lots. Huge opportunities for solar. We don't own, by and large, any of our warehouses, so we partner very closely with our landlord partners. Again, a win-win, and in many cases, the landlord installs solar, we buy the solar energy from the landlord, often at a cheaper price, and sometimes there's extra energy that it gets sold back to the grid as well. So again, it's that upfront investment, but then over time, what is the benefit there? We have a whole gradation of sites in terms of how green we are. But for a lot of them, we are transitioning to all electric MHE and PIT, which is huge and also makes it a nicer environment within the warehouse. It's a whole lot quieter.
Yeah.
Than those gas-powered forklifts. It's a whole lot quieter. We have some sites where we collect rainwater on the ceiling and use it to flush all the toilets. We have green walls and living walls. We are very proud of our bee colonies. We have quite a lot of bee colonies that help with biodiversity.
Really?
In some places, we have sheep that mow our lawns around the
What? Really? That's cool.
So we have a broad spectrum of things that we
Yeah.
do, sort of depending on where the site is and what initiatives we've been able to implement. But really, the LEDs I think start there, and then the sky's the limit.
Interesting. Brian.
Yeah. As a AMR group, we're constantly moving material in the warehouse, right? So I think it's important to find ways to reuse, your pallets for internal transport or, some other purpose rather than just discarding them all the time. I think you can easily install some type of recycling program for collecting your paper, your cardboard, plastic, and such, and partnering with your local recyclers. And like I said earlier, that I've seen some warehouses where they just take up bays and bays of real estate with packaging, or waste, if you will, from where they've unwrapped things, and just it's a big opportunity there to reduce packaging waste in your warehouse. And then as an integrator, we're constantly looking at the process optimization, right? So we want to streamline various areas of the warehouse. We want to make sure that we have a design that minimizes, any unnecessary travel distance for employees and equipment. Because going back to what I said earlier, people are still our greatest asset, right? And we want them to be fresh. We want them to be efficient. We want them to be able to feel enabled and empowered. And so creating a design that helps them with that minimizes the errors on the back end, which minimizes the returns, as I said, which minimizes, again, getting back into the whole circular economy principles that we talked about. It all plays a part, right? So, and I think the other thing that we push as well is training. The biggest downfall right now on sustainability, I think, is education. We're not educating people enough on how to engage in sustainability practices, right? The waste reduction, energy conservation, all the stuff that Megan just mentioned, other sustainable practices. People just want to know, how do they do it? How do they get started? How do they do it? So we need to, I think, invest more in some of that sustainability training. And I think we need to recognize our people and reward them who, contribute to sustainability efforts. It all seems like small little things, but you start small, you focus on achievable goals, and then you track your progress as you go. And all these can add up to have a huge, significant impact over time. So I think whether you're looking at a big impact or you just want to focus on low-hanging fruit, the low-hanging fruit is a great way to just get started and get your ball rolling, if you will, on how to be sustainable within your warehouse and, as Megan mentioned, outside the warehouse as well.
I totally agree. We have an ESG Impact Ambassador program that we've been rolling out at our sites around the world. And that's really the goal, to educate people about ESG initiatives and really to learn what they're doing. There's so many exciting initiatives that are ongoing that are often at the site level or that are site driven by ambitious people at the site, new innovations they've come up with, things where they partner with the customer, partner with the landlord. And so the goal of the program is to understand all of that, make sure sites are getting the recognition, and we do have a reward program every year where we highlight certain sites for their initiative. And then also it allows us to build our own ESG initiative playbook where we know what is happening all over the world. What is the cost? What's the ROI? Who do you talk to for more information? And what is it solving for? And I think to go back for one moment, Brian, to the point you made on packaging, because I think that's a huge one. It's not just the materials that you're using for packaging or how you're doing it or what you can reuse. There's also the need for packaging at all. We at many of our sites have automated machines that custom fit a box to the item so that you not only need either little or no packaging with inside the box, but also you're fitting a whole lot more in the trailer. And we have an initiative, and there's one site in particular that's done this very well, where we contracted for, there's an algorithm where not only is it a custom fit box, but then a machine will look at all the boxes, shoe boxes, other boxes that are going into that larger box, and will show you on a screen, will show the packer how to Tetris those boxes together to fit perfectly within that other box. So it's sort of what you need when you're going on a road trip, right? How to pack your trunk. First you put in this, then you put in that. But it means you need less packaging and you fit more in the trailer, so you have less trucks on the road, you have less wasted space. So and you're saving money on packaging, you're saving money on fuel, you're saving money on transportation costs. So it's all those things downstream together that really immediately justify the cost for that automated box machine.
Yeah, you're spot on, Megan. I mean, as a married man, I receive many packages at my door that I don't know my wife orders, but they come anyway, right? And you open them up, and I'm like going, where is the part that she ordered? And you're pulling out all of this wasted packaging material, and then you find this tiny little, earring or something in this big 10 by 10 box, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. Why did they do this? But yeah, I love some of these companies that are out there now that are right sizing the package for what's being delivered. And they even have it now where, especially within 3PLs, like where Megan operates, you have multiple customers coming through there, right? So they can even print on demand right there as they're erecting the box. They print to it and say, okay, this is going to be this customer, this is going to be this customer. Again, making it easier for their operators to understand, okay, this is actually I don't know if we're supposed to name names, but this is a Skechers, or this is Adidas, this is Nike. So they know right away, what the box contains, and they can also do a double check to make sure that this feels like a shoe. It should be a shoe. It says it's a shoe. There's a lot of innovation out there right now, and it's all geared towards, whether people understand or not, it's still geared towards making it as sustainable as possible to reduce the packaging, to reduce the amount of work that a person has to do to get it right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that it's really interesting to see that it kind of ties into some of that kind of initial points you guys had there about, sustainability, having a greater impact, right? But then also, being some more efficient and more productive, more cost savings initiatives as well at the end of the day. And a lot of those technologies are focused on that. So very interesting to hear that. And I love, Brian, too, that you mentioned the training aspect as well, because if you think about training, and, the idea, being efficient and productive is that, you have standard operating procedures, standard work that goes into place, and, your workers are, doing the same output every single time, or at least that's the hope, right, for a robust training and knowledge base for your workers. But, to that point, if a worker is not properly trained, and then going to the packaging example, they grab the wrong box, right? And now there is all this void space in the box that they're shipping out there, and they don't know any different because the training wasn't there to reinforce that, or, wasn't checked upon. Little things like that add up over time, and I think make a huge difference. And even if you think about having to go and rework some of that stuff as well, maybe now you got to use a different box, and now that box is not usable in a sense by the standards of what you want to ship out, then it's a waste, right? So a lot of interesting things there. And I'm curious about this question too, because you guys, mobile automation group, right? So we got to talk a little bit about automation robotics here. But if we look at, some of the newer technologies that are coming out. Like we see a lot of robotics out there. I know GXO uses a lot of robotics as well. And Brian, obviously you're involved with this too in the group. And we're getting to a point now where, there's been a lot of these automation robotics deployments that have been out there for a few years, multiple years in some cases. As we look at some of these technologies and as they're developed, manufactured, what does it look like for kind of end of life of some of these units from like a sustainability standpoint? Are they able to be recycled at some point, as the technology maybe becomes dated and they come to be replaced? How are manufacturers, OEMs kind of approaching that, Brian?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? And like I said earlier, as we get more and more less able to, if you will, to rely on labor, and it becomes more of a challenge, you see the robotics becoming increasingly common in warehouses, right? And so as you depend more and more on these robotics, I think it's even more important now, but it's always been important, don't get me wrong, to look at your total cost of ownership, right? What is the entire life cycle of this machine and what does that cost? But you can't do that if you don't understand their end of life. So what I'm seeing right now, a lot of the robotics companies, AMRs, mobile robot platforms, they're really looking at how do they design more for durability and reusability, right? Looking at modular components, for instance. If you can build your robots with replaceable parts, make repairs and upgrades more feasible, extend their lifespan, standardize on design. This is a hard one because every installation, every customer has some uniqueness about them. So it's hard sometimes, but if you can find a way to standardize at least some subcomponent designs, that goes a long way too. It simplifies the maintenance and it simplifies the future repurposing. I think another big one that I know is important to companies like Megan is the open source software, right? Making that software open source, it allows for a community-driven development and adaptation of existing robots for new applications. More and more, you're getting away from this islands of automation. And it's important to clients that all the pieces of automation that they're investing in can seamlessly integrate together, work together. They're not fighting against one another. But when you have that open source software and you're allowed to, allow that community-driven development and adaptation, then you get a much better flow, more efficient flow through all the technology in your warehouse. And again, that comes back to, as we said, sustainability is all about driving efficiency. So you reduce the errors, so you reduce all the stuff that costs money outside of the warehouse. I think a lot of people are also looking at redeployment and refurbishment programs.
Yeah.
You use robot, something, especially now with RaaS, right? Robot as a service. You got software as a service. Everything is a service now. So you can use the bots for a certain amount of time, then you can trade them in. So some companies are offering incentives for customers to trade in their older robots for newer models, refurbishing them for resale, things like that. Second life applications is actually a thing, identifying alternative uses for retired robots other than battle bots. So you try to find areas where you can, other industries or sectors that may be able to use a bot that was just used, say in the beverage sector, maybe you can find a place for it in the retail sector. So trying to repurpose those, I think is a big one. Also, even if you're not going to do that, you need to be responsible about how you recycle and dispose of the material, right? So you take that into mind. That goes all the way back to the design piece of it. You want to make sure you design your robots with those easily recyclable materials, and then go ahead and partner up front with your recycling facilities that maybe specialize in electronics, because that's always the hard thing to figure out how do I get rid of this. And then again, going back to what I said about MAG, collaboration and industry standards, right? So working with institutes, organizations like MAG, and other policymakers, there's tons of committees out there. You got A3, you got ANSI, OSHA, RIA. There's lots of organizations that are developing these guidelines. Make sure you're in tune with them. Make sure you partner with them and develop best practices for that robot end-of-life management. And the best way to get there is make sure that you're following all the standards, advocating for, a creation of industry-wide standards for the robot disassembly and material recovery. It'd be great. We've got standards for everything. Why not have standards for this, right? So I mean, there's a lot of companies out there leading right now. It's still an evolving field, but there's quite a few companies out there that are taking the lead and prioritizing sustainability through their entire robot life cycle. I think they're better positioned for long-term success.
Interesting. And Megan, from your perspective as someone, as GXO being someone that would be buying, these automation solutions or robotics, how do you kind of evaluate that, or how does that fit into the evaluation process of looking at some of these solutions?
Yeah, so I think we have to think long term. I think it is a combination of purchasing or leasing. And what we also look at really with automation or any equipment is not just on a site by site basis, but how can we leverage things across different sites? So if we don't need certain racking or certain automation or certain pit at one site anymore, or we have too much of it, or we only need it during peak, how do we move things around a little bit more? How do we sort of have a Facebook marketplace, if you will, within the organization to say who needs this at what site? How can we leverage it instead of procuring new all the time or sending things to scrap or waste or recycle that still have life in them? So we have to think about it not just for our customers' operations and projects, but for our own as well. It's all a cycle that feeds into one another. One of the things Brian and I were talking about yesterday is, we might have warehouses in locations that used to get hot 1 or 2 days a year. So you didn't need to climate control those warehouses. Now those same locations might get real hot 1 or 2 months a year. And so you do. But then by climate controlling that warehouse, because it's getting hotter in the environment, you're contributing more emissions to the environment to continue to heat it. So it's all a cycle, and we have to think one step ahead to say, not just what do we do today, but then part of sustainability really is the sustainability of the operations too. And some of this is contemplated in new sustainability regulations. How do we think ahead to what might be coming down the road, whether it's due to extreme weather or something else? And how do we make sure we're prepared for it in a way that really makes sense for the business?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting stuff with both of you here. And, hearing the approach from the OEM integrator side and the focus there, and then also from the end user perspective from you, Megan, too, as well, I think is super insightful. And it seems like there's obviously a lot of opportunity in our industry to go after some of these initiatives and make some changes to even you just mentioned there, Inland Empire, if you guys are listening, right? A lot of opportunity for solar, as Megan said there earlier. So, lots of opportunity to do better, I guess, in a sense, and, still, do business well at the same time. And I think it'll be interesting to see how a lot of these initiatives continue to evolve and what companies out there like GXO continue to do to push this forward and, become more sustainable, and how that kind of drives throughout and has that overall ripple effect that Brian mentioned earlier as well. So I want to thank you both for joining me today on the show and talking about this topic. Really interesting stuff. If people want to learn more about the Mobile Automation Group and what they're doing around sustainability or just mobile automation in general, what's the best way to do that, Brian?
If you just go to the MHI website, www.mhi.org, and then look under industry groups, you'll find several industry groups that may pertain to whatever you're looking for, but Mobile Automation Group is one of those. And of course, they're happy to reach out to me, Kevin, if you want to supply whoever reaches out with my contact information. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone anytime.
All right, awesome. And we'll definitely put all that information on how to get in touch with MAG and Conveyco Technologies, GXO, both Brian and Megan, as well at thenewwarehouse.com. And we'll also put that in the show notes wherever you're listening or watching. So thank you once again, Brian and Megan, for joining me on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes. And for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.